In previous videos on this channel, I've talked about the effects drugs have on our communities and our cities and the nation as a whole. I also explored how drug abuse became a global issue, delving into its origins, timeline, and spread. In recently published editions on this channel, I've shifted my focus to addressing the growing dangers of substance abuse by offering solutions to address the threats to those impacted the most, who are the people in low income communities. In this video, I'm going to share some techniques that I use to resist temptation, the temptations that might lead to a relapse during the recovery process. So today on Overcoming Addiction, we're doing an outdoor episode. And in this video, I'm going to share some techniques I use to resist temptations that might lead to a relapse during the recovery process. And the name of this episode, I'm going to call it Prevention Strategies. And it's going to detail how I became relapse proof. That's what I call it, relapse proof. Now, in my books, I share much about my substance abuse. In the first one, titled The Effective Use of Spiritual Tools, I offer suggestions on overcoming drug use using tools I developed over a short period. These tools were based on teachings from the Bible, which I then adapted to address my affliction. In my second book, The Pressures of Addiction Finding a Way Out, I share the struggles I experienced as an addict and the obstacles I encountered on my journey to recovery. One of the initial strategies that I used was the practice of discipline. Discipline was and is the primary technique I used during my recovery. I found that I need to have it in every area of my life. Part of laying out a successful strategy, and one based on deep self reflection, required me to tailor a plan that would yield my desired results. I needed to develop the strength and willpower required to cope with temptation and then commit myself to adhering to my plan. I began to develop short and long term goals reflecting how I wanted to live moving forward. Each day I worked on achieving small but significant things like reading and journaling. These daily activities put me in the habit of building toward long term goals. But for me to realize success against temptations, my discipline needed to be tested. Now, in my over 15 years of being substance free, I've been pleasantly surprised at how rarely I've been tempted to return to substances. A big part of this is thanks to my faith, which has kept me strong. Another key factor is the commitment I made to never again use any mind or body altering chemical unless prescribed by a doctor to improve my quality of life. I told myself that if I ever used any unnatural substance again, it would lead me back to substance abuse. And that was an experience I never wanted to go through again. And I would repeat that statement to myself daily with the emphasis on the word never and again, repeatedly reminding myself of the horrible experiences formed discipline. I had gotten to the point where anytime I had a thought of using drugs, I would instantly think about the consequences. That thought process itself became a pleasant habit. Being disciplined led me to become what I described again as relapse proof. I mentioned earlier that I needed my discipline to be tested, and becoming relapse proof prepared me to demonstrate just how strong I can be when faced with that first moment of temptation. 18 months after I left the recovery program, I reached out to an ex associate of mine and invited her over. Now, this is someone who I had had many romantic encounters with as we both indulged in drug use. Even though I knew she hadn't changed, I called her anyway. During the entire time we were together, I never once thought about my past drug abuse. I never once thought about using drugs again or the past. I did share with her the relief I felt not needing drugs to enjoy her company, and respectfully, she kept her drug usage out of my sight. A short time later, I would discover that it would not have mattered if she hadn't. And I'm embarrassed to say that she was not the only one. On more than a few occasions, I allowed my guests to use drugs in my presence, and I wasn't even close to being tempted. Now, I don't recommend anybody else try this. To stand firm in that instant wasn't just about willpower, it was about transformation. It showed me that my strength wasn't just reactive, it was proactive. By allowing them to indulge in front of me showed that I didn't just resist because I knew I would never use drugs again. I had redefined the moment. It gave me the confidence of knowing that I could go into that type of environment to help someone else if needed. Prioritizing is another strategy I learned to use as a form of discipline. How? By making myself a priority. Making myself priority one. Now I had to realize that it was not a sign of being selfish to make myself priority one. I needed to understand that doing so is an act of stewardship, not ego. Placing priorities in my life required discipline, not the rigid kind that punishes, but the kind that protects. I had to unlearn the belief that putting myself first was a betrayal of others. It wasn't. It was a declaration. I mattered. My health, my peace, my growth. They're not luxuries, they're foundations. Being disciplined meant saying no when I used to say yes out of guilt. It meant carving out time for rest, for reflection, for recovery. It meant recognizing that I can't pour into others from an empty cup, and that refilling mine isn't selfish, it's sacred, and it's foundational. This last strategy is the most powerful one by far. It is the discipline of listening and obeying God. The discipline of listening and obeying God isn't just a strategy, it's a surrender that reshapes every other priority. It's not passive obedience, but active alignment. I learned to tune my ear to divine wisdom and let that voice guide my steps, especially when the path was unclear or the temptations were loud. I found that what makes it so powerful is that it transcends willpower. It's not just about resisting relapse or staying focused, it's about being rooted in something eternal, something wider than our own instincts. When obedience flows from a relationship rather than fear, it becomes a source of strength, not a burden. Moving forward, I'll share some other tips or strategies on recovery from substance abuse. So be on the lookout for them. If you or someone you know is struggling with substance abuse or abuse of any kind, please seek help before it is too late. If you like, I can make some referrals on your behalf. My contact information is included in this video. If anyone has suggestions, comments, or questions, please contact me. Also, books are still on sale and the purchasing information is included in the flyer. If you like a signed copy, please email me to make mailing arrangements. Please don't forget to like and share. If not the channel, at least the information in the video. Start your own discussion. I appreciate all who have subscribed and follow this channel. I'll see you guys the next time on another episode of Overcoming Addiction.